welcome to TUC0's Talks. TUC0's Talks is a leadership podcast where we talk to military leaders and to athletic coaches to try to figure out how do we take care of people and how do we learn and fail forward. Well, I do want to thank Moray Classical Schools for partnering with us. Moray Classical Schools is a private Christian classical school specifically tailored for military kids. If you do not know about Moray Classical Schools, I highly recommend you go to morayclassical.org and learn more about them. Today, I'm talking with Sean Radke, and we're going to discuss some lessons of virtues that he learned from skateboarding. We're also going to talk about creative freedom, resilience, and the ability to overcome fear and failure. He's going to share some skateboarding stories and how it influenced his work as a mission pastor and the value of being present and expressing himself. We're also going to touch on skateboarding in Japan and how it impacted relationships there. Overall, the conversation highlights character development and perseverance, and I cannot wait for you to hear the last 18 life lessons everyone should follow. Well, make sure that you like and subscribe and get ready to check in with TUC0's Talks. Hello and welcome to TUC0's Talks. Today is a special episode because I have a long time and very dear friend, Sean Radke, with us. So this has actually been a couple years since we've been face to face and talked, and so I'm excited. So Sean, you want to say hi real quick and then just introduce yourself, who you are.
Yeah, Chris, it's so good to be with you. So first of all, thanks for having me on your podcast. And I'm Sean, like you said. My wife is Lisa. We've been married for 22 years. I grew up in a small town south of Birmingham, Alabama, right along Highway 65. It's called Alabaster. I've got I got 4 kids now. I've got Kai, who's age 17. I've got Ian, who's age 15. Naomi, who's 13. And then I've got Kira, who's age 5. And so 3 teenagers in my house, need a lot of prayer. Things are hitting. And then I've got a kindergartner. So our kindergartner is our tag along. We adopted her when we lived in Japan, and she helps provide really good balance to our house. Yeah, that's me. I'm a missions pastor at a church here in Evansville, Indiana.
Golly, how I'm 48. Holy geez. Am I 48 or 47? I don't even know anymore. I don't keep track of it. I'm exhausted and I'm tired and I'm working every day. And the fact that you have a kindergartner and you're going through life that way, man, I just am so impressed with you and Lisa for taking that on and just doing God's work, man. That's awesome.
Thanks, bro.
All right. We've always been talking about military leadership and then coaches. But one of the things that is so important is being an athlete. And we grew up going to college together. We went on sort of beach project where we spent a summer down in Panama City Beach with around 200 other college kids and 8 of us in a room. And so that's not bad when you have 8 dudes in a room, and we just sort of figure it out. But how they had 8 girls in a room, all sharing one bathroom, was, just a miracle in itself. But during that time, we just had great time to talk and get to know each other and just share life. And that's been awesome. And one of the things you shared with me was that back in the day you were doing skateboarding. And so that's a crazy sport because it's insanely difficult. You've got to go out and just be fearless at times. And so I just wanted to talk to you about those days. And one, how did you get into skateboarding? And then what characteristics, traits, virtues did you really learn from that?
Yeah, so I first got into skateboarding when I was in 6th grade. I had seen skateboarding around, some kids in the neighborhood even in small town Alabama, I didn't have money for a skateboard. I used these points that you'd get on the back of Kool-Aid packets, and I saved up points to mail them in and get a skateboard. So this was probably 1988. And so I got my board, and then this kid down the street had this jump ramp that was all graffitied up. You know, it was like this kind of had this bad boy image from the 1980s ramp, and it was kind of dry rotted plywood. And uh, I asked him if I could ride it, and he ended up saying, "Hey, you can just have it." So I took it to my house, started riding this board, and some of my friends started to do it. So I grew up playing baseball and basketball, and those were like that's what I was really passionate about the most as a kid. Just loved being outside. And but when I discovered skateboarding, I was just like, man, this speaks to me. This is really different. It definitely had the cool factor. So let's just be honest. I liked it for the brought. It was like, you know, it's crazy because popular then. It was sort of like you know the cool kids at school didn't do it, but it just had this cool factor. I bought a board when I was in seventh grade from this kid. It was just the deck. It was just the wood board. It was the first professional board I got. We had a big posse of us that skated. We had our crew, and skating. I was skating pretty much all the way from middle school through high school. Yeah, skateboarding, and I still like to skate. I'm not trying to jump down big stuff or get broken off, kill myself, as the kids say. But you know, I'm still skating to this day, except just for a little bit different reasons now, and a little bit mellow, mellow pace, mellow level. It's more exercise now and connecting with people. So that's how it all got started. So that was like 88, 89 I started. And so whenever people ask me, like kids will see me skating, they're like, man, how long have you been skating? You know, and in other words, we're old, like over 30 years. I've taken breaks from it. You know, when I was in school and college, I didn't skate much, but it was something I always kind of came back to. I just always, there was a lot about it that kept kind of drawing me back to it.
That's awesome. You know, finding that thing that connects you or
Mm.
connects with you, and just finding the joy and the passion in that. You know, I think God always just gives us certain things that we're talented at and that we can excel at, and then that we can use that for. Um, Now you are a missions pastor.
Yeah.
You're up in Indiana, and you go out and you skate, and people look at you, and probably, you know, a 40 something year old person skating looks a little different, and it offers an ability to have conversations for you. Um, so I think there's that practicality of life itself. But when we look at the skill set that
Mm.
you learned,
Mm.
and not just the physical skill set, but the emotional quotient that you learned, and the other things, what do you take from that into your job now?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I still see myself skateboarding, I hope, as long as I can walk. I mean, I think I'm like, I tell people, I'm like, you know, for me, I'm more likely to fall off of a bicycle than I am to skate, just as it's, you know, it's like I'm just more comfortable on it. I know my limitations, how far I can go with, and you know, whenever I think I might be too old to skate, I think about times when I used to live in Japan as a missionary, and I'd meet guys older than me that were better than me. And I was like, they're still skating, and they're not trying to do crazy, crazy stuff that's, you know, but I'm like, I should be able to skate. And then get this, you'll like this. So I read this book, Unbroken, about Louis Zamperini. He's the World War II hero.
Hmm.
He wrote this book called Unbroken that probably a lot of people have read. It's just a fantastic book. But you know, you read about this guy who's this military hero, and he overcame incredible physical challenges, and just, I mean, this guy's the picture of resilience, just a hero of mine. And then you know, you're like, against all odds, he survived and just amazing American hero. And then you get to the end of this book, and there's a picture of him riding a skateboard in his 70s. And this guy is like, Louis Zamperini was a skateboarder. He like took up skateboarding in his 70s. And what? I was like, what a stud. Um, and uh, and then I just heard, I was, Fred Astaire apparently started skateboarding when he was 70, and he got this lifetime membership to the National Skateboarding Society, and he broke his wrist when he was 78 skateboarding. And I'm like, look, I I I can keep going. I've got a little bit more in me. My wife's like, as long as you wear a helmet. Um, so yeah, I do bring a lot, I think, into my working life. And I think that some of the things I learned were not things that I knew I learned, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's, you know, um, I think there's that famous saying by a philosopher that said, life is lived forwards but understood backwards. And I look back and I'm like, I understand things I was learning. And I think it was teaching me mental health at a young age and the importance of it. Like, I didn't know what it was. And, back in the 80s and 90s when we were growing up, people didn't talk about mental health and like they do now. And young people, I don't think we had much that was in the conversation in the culture. Thinking about, skateboarding is all about kind of creative freedom. And that's just really good for you. And I think it in a real healthy way, it also taught me just resilience. So
Yeah.
resilience is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties. It just tough. And second definition of resilience, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape or elasticity. So even that object is you. So just teaching you
Right.
to come back. I mean, skateboarding, you fall a lot. It hurts. You from the moment you stand on it, you're first learning to balance. And then if you get beyond the balance part, you're learning how to do turns. But then as you start trying to learn different maneuvers, or they call them tricks, you're using it's like full body workout. I mean, it's, you're using a lot of muscles. You're using your core, not just your legs. You're using upper body sometimes. You're putting everything you have into it. I mean, it is 100%. You're going at it, and it takes mental toughness too. I mean, just to be able to keep after you're falling, trying this maneuver or trying to just stay balanced on it for some amount of time, and you just keep falling off. And it's a mental battle. You just keep getting back on the board, and you keep trying that thing again and again and again. And so it really does help you, I think, develop some capacity for failure and just pushing through hard stuff, having mental battles. And, I work mainly mental work. It's not manual labor, which I think is very dignified. And I enjoy manual labor, but my work is mainly mental work. So there's such a mental side to skateboarding that, you're having to just kind of okay, I'm going to keep trying this. I'm going to keep going. I think I can, I can learn this if I keep going at it. And if I'm just stubborn, and if I'm not letting even getting hurt get in the way. I mean, you can definitely go too far with that. In some ways, you can, in a healthy way, I think, push through some of the pain, to reach goals. And so there's a lot of creative freedom. I think it really helps you with things like anxiety, things like depression. It's proven to be great in recovery for people that have struggled with those things, have gone through hard things. So I think it's just so good, and helps you, really have to be, I think, assertive in good ways as you're learning, working at a church, and I'm interacting with a lot of missionaries, and I'm thinking about how can we advance our global outreach core value as a church that we've always had as a church for the last 50 years, I'm thinking about, man, I'm 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 thankful that the Lord used skateboarding to help me just value mental health and see that man, that's that even though I didn't know that I was learning that, it was a healthy outlet for me when I was a young person, and I think it's because I like a lot of skateboarders come from broken homes, and so I'm also a kid with ADHD, so I'm like my whenever I skate, that inner 15-year-old inside of me that's getting out movement, just physical movement. But I was a kid that, man, I needed to be moving. I didn't like to sit still for very long. Skateboarding is great for kids with ADHD. So, and
Yeah.
in that way, it reminds me, yeah, my job is mental work, but I do need to go out and do physical exercise. I need to stay committed to, the Apostle Paul said, that physical training is of some value, but godliness has value
Yeah.
for all, right? It's like, and I think he was saying, I was just reflecting on that the other day. It was in my daily Bible reading. And, Paul was saying, don't make it an idol, but it definitely matters. Just remember what is the most important as a Christian: godliness, becoming like Christ. That's the goal. But for me, as somebody who does a lot of mental work, it's good for me to remember I've got to go out and get exercise. And for me, skateboarding is a lot more fun than hitting the gym. So I'll go
Yeah.
hit the gym
Yeah.
sometime, but I'm like going to the skate park or pushing around with my 17-year-old son, like we did last night. We pushed around the neighborhood. There's a loop in our neighborhood. It's a third of a mile, and it's got one pretty big hill, and I'll go walk my dog or rock around the neighborhood, put a backpack on. But man, there's something about skateboarding that's just super fun, and it's like, man, I'd rather do this and just be outside, enjoying nature, and man, that's what I get to do, and so I'm like, I need that to help balance me. I think with what God has called me to do in my career. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, Sean, there's a ton there. There's a ton there. And I cannot wait to go back and listen to that again, because there were so many things that you said. So let me recap, if I can, what really stood out to me. One, creative freedom.
Mm,
Like the ability to think through what you want to do and then to be able to go execute that. Um, you know, the mental capacity and the way to deal with ADHD or mental health, where you're just going out, and the freedom that that brings, and being able to get outside.
mm,
The ability to not dwell on the fear of failure. Like, I'm going to go up and I'm going to do something. And I'm not worried about if I'm going to hit it or not. I'm just going to go try it. And if I don't, I'm going to pick up my board. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it again. I mean, that's a critical, critical life skill. Uh, and and I think, when we grew up, we didn't talk about mental health,
mm,
but we all knew it. Like,
mm,
I had a general rule that if it was during the weekend, then my parents kicked me out of the house by 10 a.m. Like, that was like, no, get out of the house. It's a nice day. Go play. And then we would come back sometime around 1 o'clock, like dogs ready to eat and drink. And then they would kick us right back out again. And then when we were going, they would say, come home when the lights turn on, right? When the street lights come on. And we would come home and we would eat again. And then we would go out and play kick the can at night,
mm,
and, uh, And I heard the joke, and it was a joke, but it totally serious. At 10 o'clock, they would say, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Because all the parents would be hanging out and the kids would still be playing kick the can. And it was sort of like a, hey, time's up. They've got to go to bed. And we did that. But we all knew getting outside, playing, interacting, all of that was part of the mental health resiliency type thing that you're talking about. And the fact that you're still doing skateboarding and enjoying it and seeing that freedom is huge. So there's so much there that we can go toward. But I do want to ask a question, because now I'm supremely interested in this, is when you were in Japan doing mission work, you said that there were people out skateboarding. Is skateboarding a big thing in Japan?
It is a huge thing in Japan. There's the sort of image part of skateboarding big in around the world now. You'll see kids, people wearing Thrasher t-shirts now. Thrasher's full skateboarding
Mhm.
magazine. And the sort of mainstream society would have always frowned on wearing a Thrasher t-shirt when I was growing up. That was very punk rock and rebellious.
Right.
And but now it's so big, and you'd see that in Japan. So as you see it here in Japan, you will see them on the podium. The skateboarding became an Olympic sport this last Olympics, as a lot of people are aware of. It was actually in Tokyo, and this is a fun fact. They had the Olympic Village, and they had the actual skateboarding competition really close to where I lived when our family lived in Tokyo. We left before the Olympics. I was just kicking myself. I was like, man, I wish I was there. And I'm watching the Olympics, and you're like, man, that's where I live. That's so awesome. Um, that was right down the street from our house, and the Japanese were on the podium
Crazy.
there. The Japanese women coach was somebody that I would see at the local skate park and that I knew, and I saw her on TV, and I was like, oh, I know that lady who's like their coach. She was, it's almost like going to a local, you know, basketball court where you're playing pickup basketball. That's kind of what a skate park is like. You just go and meet local people. So skateboarding is huge in Japan. I've heard, I don't know why that is, but it's interesting. I've heard it said that a good comparable kind of activity to skateboarding is martial arts, and you can see it's in a lot of ways it's like a martial
Mm.
art. There's some individualistic component to it. So in the Olympics, of course, it was a team sport, but it's this interesting intersection of it's an art form, but then a skateboard is a piece of art in a lot of ways. Those things are collectible, but it looks like a martial art, and when you see it. And so it just seems to speak to Japanese culture a lot. And some of the best skaters in the world are in Japan, and it was a great way to connect with young people. I mean, I would have done it even if I was just doing it by myself, but it was like an awesome added value that, man, here I am. I was a youth pastor, and we were doing church planning, and it was just such a natural way to meet guys and build relationships, develop friendships. Um, so yeah, it was just something that's kind of just unique about me. I was like, but it was cool to see how the Lord used it when I was over there.
It's funny because you say, hey, it's like a martial art, but and I've noticed it in snowboarding as well. A very large Asian influence, definitely on the podium, and being able to go through. And I love the artwork, the creativity, and something. And I'm working with more classical schools, and something that they always put on athletics is that it's the leadership laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And so you teach people in a classroom what character and virtues is, but then you put them into an athletic event, and then now you're testing them. Am I able to take those characteristics and those things we're talking about and putting them into action? There's nothing like a high school kid, when somebody pushes you or shoves you or gets mad or yells, how are you going to deal with that? And how's it going to work? Well, in the same way, I really think skateboarding is that same type of thing where we're teaching all these character and virtues, and you're putting into a position where you're on a skate park and you're trying something new. Are you able to calm down? Are you able to, in your mind, clearly think, yet have the creative aspects of being able to hit a jump or try something new, and fail forward, as we always talk about here? I just haven't thought about it before, but now as you're talking, I'm just sort of like, oh my gosh, man, that's like awesome.
Yeah, yeah. My daughter yesterday had her first track and field event, and she was long jumping for the first time. And they hadn't really practiced long jumping because we don't have like a sand pit or whatever at our school. And she was so nervous going into it, and she was like, I'm just afraid, stupid. And I told her, you know, I said, Naomi, this is something I've learned through skateboarding is it's okay to try new things. It's okay to look dumb, and and it's good to like be willing to put yourself out there even when you feel stupid doing it and you're worried about what other people are going to think. You're being vulnerable in that way because you're learning something new. And I was like, it's a lot better to go out and have that approach to life than just sitting back and staying in your comfort zone and being like, I'm not going to try this thing because I'm going to look dumb. I can tell you, Chris, like a lot of people at the skate park, they're not judging other people. They're feeling insecure and worried that they're stupid. You can look at a bunch of skateboarders and be like, yeah, those guys, they're acting cool or whatever. And, it's like the worst insult you could ever give a skater is call them a poser, or at least it was when I was growing up.
Yeah.
You're not authentic. Because it was all about you being, there was something in skateboarding culture we recognized, like authenticity is a good thing, but you're putting yourself out there doing it. You fall a lot and you're on this, it's a toy, it's something kids started using. So you can't take yourself too seriously. So it taught me like at some point, like, don't take yourself too seriously with this. Yeah, I want to get better and I want to improve. But man, this is about enjoying this process. So what I've tried to teach my kids and teach other people is that, you know, skateboarding, it's not about being awesome. It's about doing it. It's about just going out and doing it. And when I remember that, I enjoy skateboarding the most, where I'm like, today I went out and I did it. And that was the goal,
Mm.
is not to go out and be amazing. You know what I mean? And I feel like that what that gets at is what we call being process oriented and not results oriented. It's about the process, it's about learning. And so I'm enjoying, yeah, you don't enjoy failing, but when something speaks to you and you really enjoy that physical challenge, whether it's skateboarding or something else, you're okay and you accept the process because you're like, this is something that's worth it to me. This is something and so that's something I want my kids to always be is, don't, your failures don't define you. Right. And so, you know,
Yeah.
tell her go out, and she ended up going and she long jumped, and she didn't win anything. That wasn't the goal, but she was like, I had so much fun today. She was like, she texted me last night and was like, track today was a W. And I was like, sweet. Okay, cool. Like it kind of, hopefully it gets at your question. How are you viewing fear of failure, fear of looking stupid, insecure,
Mm.
even fear of getting hurt or whatever. And again, sometimes some of that is God-given and good fear of getting, um, so, but again, there's a healthy way to overcome fear of physical pain.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I'm now processing all of what you're saying about the fear and being able to go do things. And um, you you've lived a life where you've had things to be fearful of,
mm,
and finishing writing a book.
mm,
And I really haven't talked about it, so this will be strange to put on the podcast. But anyway, so the lesson that I just ended up teaching on was, in the Bible it says, "Do not be afraid." And fear, what's the difference between being scared and what's the difference between being fearful? And
mm,
scared is known as a temporary, where fear is a permanent. And so we all in human nature are going to be scared. It's going
mm,
to happen. But when we're fearful, we don't do what we're called to do because we freeze.
mm,
And so I think, when you look at the great skateboarders, you look at the great snowboarders,
mm,
the Tony Hawks of the world, I guarantee you they were scared.
mm,
Guarantee you they were scared when doing it, but the fear was gone. They were fearless, meaning they were willing to do what was called of them to do at the time that they needed to do it. And when they put the fear away, they were able to execute at this exceptional level.
mhm,
And those are taught to us in different ways. And yours being skateboarding, what an incredible way, and a passion, a sport, a lifelong, a way of introduction, all those things that when we're in 6th grade and we start picking these things up and no one thinks anything, and parents are like, "Are you really going to take this seriously? Or are you going to treat it like the violin that I bought that you haven't picked up in 2 years?" Or maybe that was just me. But those are the things that are out there. And man, you're able to make a lifelong impact on others,
mm,
and your kids, from doing that. So man, what a huge deal.
mm.
All right, well, just like that, we've been going for 30 minutes. So it's just like old times where you just sit and talk forever. But let's try to wrap this up and get to final thoughts. So this is a leadership podcast. We talk to usually young leaders that are trying to figure out their first thing. And so I want you to think about a young leader, and imagine he's a young pastor coming in, um, and with your experience of what you've seen and what you do, what would you tell this person as far as coming in and going to lead? What leadership expectations do you have, or what advice do you have of what they should be focused on or doing?
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull from a resource. It was an article I read that I really liked. It was called 18 Invaluable Lessons Skateboarding Can
Mhm.
Teach About Business and Life. And it's an
Gosh.
article by a guy named Jeff Davidson. You and I are coming from a biblical Christian perspective on things, and this isn't necessarily a Christian article. And I'm going to reword some of the things that they said. But I'm just going to give this quick list if I can. And
Yeah.
I was thinking, as a Christian, I can affirm all of these things, in as long as we interpret these the correct way. But I really like this list, so I'm going to give you and your listening audience these 18 invaluable lessons skateboarding can teach you about business and life. I completely resonate with these. Number one, never expect immediate success. Number two, practice with people around your skill level. Number three, practice continuously. Number four, take care of your body. Number five, iterate, which I had to look that word up, but it's trying to think whenever you fail. Um, number number six, be unique. So there's a good kind of way that we can be who God made us to be, and not try to be other people. Right? Is
Yes.
of God. And number seven, style quality trumps quantity. So that just gets to some of the things we were saying about how much style is valued almost as much as what you do, how you look skating matters to skateboarders. They recognize just beauty, smoothness, looking like you are just natural on it, I guess. Um, be yourself. That kind of goes back to what we said. It's number 8. Number 9, learning only truly happens through experience. There's a lot to that.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10,
Yeah.
grow slowly. Number 11, be present. One of the things I love about skateboarding is that you're able to really it's hard to think about anything else. Like, I heard the guy who founded Facebook, what's his name?
Is that Zuckerberg?
Yeah,
Mark
Zucker,
Zuckerberg?
say he used to run and he stopped running because he was just thinking about work all the time when he ran. And he said he started taking up some martial because he was able to just focus on that thing. He was able to be present. And I like skateboarding for that reason. You have to be present when you do it. So being present. Number 12, take breaks. Some of these are not too deep, but hey, we need.
That's good.
13, freedom trumps power. In a sense, we can affirm that. Number 14, failures are just learning opportunities. Number 15, some fear is perfectly okay. Number 16, express yourself. Again, it goes back to not a kind of worldview of what you could call expressive individualism that says, your identity is all about, who you are or something. This is just, as we can affirm, yeah, God wants me to do the things that that are good, true, and beautiful, that are uniquely kind of based on how He's wired me, and help me glorify Him. Number 17, stuff happens. um, Life. And then 18, you're never too old. So yeah, that's hopefully just a good wrap up of the things that we talked about. That list, again, all credit to Jeff Davidson for that. But I was like, I really like that because it sort of helps give you some quick points that gets really at the type of things that we were talking about today. So hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I'll ask you to email that, just the link to where that is, so I can put that in the description below, because that's fantastic. I'd love for people to be able to read that. I think the list is critical. Man, yeah. And it's hilarious because we had not talked about that, but that's really what we talked about today.
Yeah,
A lot of those different points that are going through, and what a phenomenal way to work it through. Well, Sean, man, brother, it's so good to talk to you, and I really appreciate you jumping on here and just sharing what God's put on your heart with these people, and I think it'll be huge.
absolutely. And just a great privilege to share, just that part of my heart with you, and just so thankful for our friendship, and I'm glad we could connect over just talking about skateboarding today and life. So enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
for real, for real. All right, well, thank everyone for just taking the time to be with us today. I hope that you got a lot out of it, as I did. And from Sean and I, this is TUC0 Wright checking off.